Hello again, everybody. Evan Thompson here from Sport Relay. I'm the host and author of Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. In this video, I'm going to explain to you the reliever stats we use in our reliever analysis, as well as the formula we use for our team and our individual rankings. First, the philosophy behind everything. A pitcher's job is to keep runs off the board. How? By keeping runners off base. And how does he do that? Largely by pitching with command. A key concept in pitching is that pitching is like being a goalie. Pitching alone cannot win games, just as goalies, by their save power alone, cannot win games. The best either one can do is keep a team from losing. Somebody's got to score, right? Now, don't twist my words around. Pitching can definitely lose a game, but pitching alone cannot win a game. Again, the best it can do is keep a team from losing. Extending into relief pitching. Their job as relievers is threefold. 1, protect any lead they get. 2, if the game is tied, preserve the tie game. Or 3, if their team is behind, their job is to keep their team from falling farther behind. How? By keeping runs off the board. How do they do that? By keeping runners off base. How do they do that? Largely by pitching with command. Sound familiar? So, in accordance with those philosophies, when we do our team and individual rankings, we break them down into the following 4 categories: clutch, run prevention, base runner prevention, and command. Clutch makes up 50% of the score, run prevention 35%, base runner prevention 10%, and command 5%. Let's go through each briefly. For clutch, 67% comes from the goose egg to broken egg ratio. We'll explain that further in a minute. The other 33% comes from the total number of goose eggs. That's done so that if there are 2 pitchers with the same goose egg to broken egg ratio, but one has had more opportunities than the other, then the one with more opportunities is going to get a boost over the one who didn't have as many. Now, why do we use the goose egg instead of the save? There are several advantages over the save. I'm not going to take long on this because we dedicated an entire episode to it. That's episode 0102 of Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza, which is available on this channel. In brief, the save has some flaws. Not all saves are created equal, as Chris Welsh of the Cincinnati Reds broadcast team, a former pitcher himself, once said to me. For one, there are some weird ways to get a save that wouldn't seem to be saves at first glance. One of them is this. You pitch the final 3 innings of a blowout win, you get the save no matter what the score is. Here's another. If the pitcher enters the game with a tying run on deck, keeps the lead, and finishes the game, it's a save. So if his team is ahead by 5 and he enters the game with the bases loaded, that's a save situation. He can enter the game in the 8th inning with the bases loaded and 2 outs, then give up a grand slam, but as long as the opponent doesn't tie the game and he finishes the game, it's a save. Here's another advantage of the goose egg over the save. In any given game, there's only one save possible. Only one is ever given out. Goose eggs, however, are given out inning by inning from the 7th onward. That way, setup men as well as closers get credit for pitching a scoreless inning with a narrow lead. Plus, with the goose egg, you get rewarded for tossing a scoreless inning during a tie game. That doesn't happen with the save. Let's briefly go through the checklist of a goose egg. First off, like I just said, it's assigned inning by inning from the 7th inning onward. When the pitcher enters the inning or begins the inning, if he is a reliever that starts off the inning on the mound, it must be either a tie game, or his team must have a 1-run lead, or must have a 2-run lead. Or, when the pitcher begins the inning, if the tying run is on base or at bat, it's also a goose egg scenario. The pitcher must record the 3rd out under the following conditions. Either he records all 3 outs, or the number of outs he records plus the number of runners he inherited must be at least 3. So if the pitcher comes in the game with 1 on and 1 out, then gets the last 2 outs, he'll get a goose egg. Or if he comes in the game with 2 outs, if there are 2 runners on or the bases are loaded, then he'll get a goose egg as well. The pitcher did not allow any runs of any kind. That means no earned runs or unearned runs are charged to him. He also can't allow any inherited runners to score, meaning any runners that were on base when he entered the game. The negative counterpart for a goose egg is a broken egg. The broken egg criteria are simple. 2 things must apply. Number 1, The pitcher could have had a goose egg, but ended up allowing or ended up being charged with an earned run. Number 2, this happened in an inning where he did not close out the win for his team. So if a pitcher enters a 4-2 game in the bottom of the 9th and allows 1 run but finishes the 4-3 victory, he doesn't get a broken egg, he gets something else. That leads us to the next point here. A goose egg scenario that does not result in either a goose egg or a broken egg goes down as a meh. Please understand, I am not taking credit for the goose egg, broken egg, and meh. These statistics were invented by Nate Silver of 538.com, so please don't go out claiming, hey, he's saying he invented these. No, I didn't. I just used them. I did not invent them. Nate Silver did. Nate Silver deserves all the credit in the world for these, so we want to give him all the credit in the world for these. I did, however, invent the stat that we use for the bulk of the next category, which is run prevention. We've broken that down into 3 components. The scoreless outing percentage, earned run variety, is 75% of the score. I invented that in late 2021. Inherited runners scored percentage is 15% of the score, and ERA minus is 10% of the score. Why scoreless outing percentage instead of just ERA? For years, I have said that reliever ERA is ridiculous for more than one reason, the main being that it was designed for starters. ERA measures how many runs a pitcher would give up on average if he pitches a full 9-inning game. Relievers don't even pitch 9 innings in a week, so that's silly. If a reliever has one bad night, his ERA gets completely ruined for a month. Now, online, when I brought this up one time, I saw some people saying, well, it's not really useless because if his ERA is really high because of a bad night, it means he lost a game for his team. Yeah, we have statistics for that. I use broken eggs. Other people use blown saves. But the point is, we already have something that measures that. That's not what ERA is supposed to measure. ERA is supposed to measure how effectively you keep runs off the scoreboard. And anyone who's in statistics, in the field of statistics and mathematics, will tell you, if they've been in statistics long enough to have learned this, that if you use a statistic for something other than what it's intended to measure, you invalidate the whole thing. That means you make it completely worthless. Now, back to scoreless outing percentage. The second point with scoreless outing percentage is, with starting pitchers, shutouts are rare, but we do keep track of them and celebrate them when they happen because, well, they're a big deal, so we should. The relief pitching version of a shutout is a scoreless appearance, or what I call a scoreless outing. But scoreless relief appearances aren't merely celebrated, they're expected. So what we're tracking here is how many times a reliever does what he's expected to do, which is to put a 0 on the scoreboard in the inning or innings that he pitched, and then either hand the baton off to the next guy or finish the game. In fact, scoreless appearances are so expected that most fans don't even remember when they happen, or don't even notice them when they happen. They only notice when a reliever gives up runs. I'm serious. Look at what happens in message boards or Facebook groups or whatever you want to call them. Anytime a relief pitcher gives up a run, the fans in there will act like he's the worst pitcher on the planet. Even if his previous 19 appearances were scoreless, they'll pretend they don't count if he gives up a run in that 20th appearance. The formula for the scoreless outing percentage is simple. We take the number of scoreless outings the relief pitcher has and divide it by the number of games he has pitched in relief. For our rankings, we use the variety called the earned run variety, and what I mean by that is, for an appearance to not count as a scoreless appearance, the reliever must be charged with at least 1 earned run. We initially didn't do that, but later decided it would make more sense to go ahead and use the earned run variety because it would make it more consistent with the fact that we use ERA minus as an error correction stat. Moving on to inherited runners scored percentage. This is pretty simple. If a relief pitcher comes into the game and there are already runners on base, meaning runners that got on base when somebody else was pitching, those runners are called inherited runners. The percentage of those runners that ends up scoring constitutes the inherited runners scored percentage. To calculate it, take the number of inherited runners that scored off a given pitcher, that's abbreviated as IS, and divide that by the total number of runners said relief pitcher inherited, which is abbreviated as IR. Like you do anytime you convert something to a percent, if you're going from a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal point 2 digits to the right, There's your inherited runners scored percentage. For reference, the league average every year is typically in the low 30s. Now for ERA minus. What this does is gives an error correction to ERA based on a pitcher's run scoring environment, whether it be pitching in a pitcher-friendly ballpark like Seattle versus pitching in a hitter-friendly place like Cincinnati or Denver or Fenway Park in Boston or Target Field in Minneapolis. ERA minus takes the pitcher's earned run average, adjusts it based on the ballpark factor of his home park. I won't get into the math of that, and believe me, I'm doing you a favor by doing that. And then divides that answer by the league-wide ERA, either the National League ERA or the American League ERA, depending on the league the pitcher pitches in. So if your adjusted ERA is 2.00 and the league average ERA is 4.00, you do 2 divided by 4, then take your answer and multiply it by 100 to turn it from a decimal into a whole number, and your answer will be 50. But what does that mean? Well, each whole number in ERA minus is equal to 1 percentage point. So, if your ERA minus is 50, that means your earned run average is 50% that of the league-wide ERA, which is good. Lower the better in ERA, right? So you want to give up fewer runs. So if your ERA is 1.00 and the league-wide ERA is 4.00, then your ERA minus is going to be 25. If your ERA is 5.00 and the league average ERA is 4.00, your ERA minus is going to be 125. It's pretty simple. By the way, for reference here, won't do this for relief pitchers because it's hard to decide what innings to use as a cutoff, because each year relief usage varies. So we'll go with starting pitchers. The single season record for a starting pitcher in ERA minus is 35 by Pedro Martinez in 2000. And I know someone's going to ask about Bob Gibson in 1968, so I'll mention it here. His was 38. Reason being, the league-wide ERA in the American League in 2000 was 4.92. The National League ERA in 1968 was 2.99. They didn't just lower the mound because of Bob Gibson. That's a big myth. 7 starting pitchers that year, 5 in the American League and 2 in the National League, had an ERA under 2 in 1968. It was ridiculous. The reason we include ERA minus in our score, albeit with a small weight, is for a scenario like this one. Say there's a pitcher who has a scoreless outing percentage of 75%, but in the games where he gave up runs, he only gave up a run or 2 each time. Now say there's another pitcher that has a scoreless outing percentage of 75%, but in the games where he gave up runs, he was giving up multi-run home runs. I call that type of pitcher a when it rains it pours pitcher. By including the ERA minus, we can differentiate between those two pitchers and make sure the pitcher who only gives up a few runs when he gives up runs benefits more than the when it rains it pours pitcher. Now for the shorter categories. Base runner prevention is split into 2 categories. One is WHIP, the other is home run percentage. WHIP makes up 85% of the score. Home run percentage makes up the other 15%. WHIP is a simple stat, but it's a very important one. It stands for walks and hits per innings pitched. What this measures is how many base runners a pitcher gives up. Obviously, the more base runners a pitcher gives up, the higher his chances of giving up runs. So if a pitcher has a low ERA but a high WHIP, eventually the dam is going to burst. The way to calculate this is also simple. You take the number of walks a pitcher allows, add it to the number of hits a pitcher allows, and divide your answer by the number of innings pitched. We carry it out to 3 decimal places, and so if it's 1.250, I read it as 1250. Not a lot of people do it that way, but I do. I have confused some people at times. Sorry about that. Just the way I read it makes it easier for me. Why do we use home run percentage? Well, if you have 2 pitchers, both with a 1,000 WHIP, but pitcher B gives up a lot of solo home runs, and pitcher A keeps the ball in the ballpark, we need a way to make a difference between the two. What is home run percentage? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's the number of home runs a pitcher allows divided by the number of batters he's faced. That's it. Really easy. The league average in home run percentage for relievers is typically around 2.5%, and when you bring starters into the picture, it typically goes up to around 3. The fourth category that we use for our rankings is command. We use one stat for that, and only one. This is a great statistic. Strikeout percentage minus walk percentage, abbreviated as K minus BB, then a percent sign. It's a pitcher's strikeout percentage minus his walk percentage. Exactly what it sounds like. Now, there are other stats that try to measure this called Ks per 9 and walks per 9, but the reason I don't use those is not every inning is guaranteed to be the same length, and it's not always due to something the pitcher did. If the pitcher gives up a lot of hits in the inning, or if there are a lot of errors in the inning, he could be pitching to 7 or 8 batters in that inning. But if he strikes out the side in order, he's pitching to only 3. This way, you simply take all the batters that face him and then figure out which percentage strike out. And of all the batters that face him, which percentage walk. Then you subtract the walk percentage from the strikeout percentage. By doing this, we are measuring how much more often a pitcher strikes batters out versus walking them. Obviously, the higher the percentage, the better. If a pitcher strikes out a lot of guys but also walks a lot of guys, this shows him how much it really might hurt him. Moving on to the individual rankings. For closers and setup men, we use the same categories as the team rankings, but we tweak the percentages a little bit so that pitchers on teams that aren't ahead as often don't get unfairly punished. For closers and setup men, we have clutch at 45%, run prevention at 35%, base runner prevention at 13%, and command at 7%. Middle relievers are a little different. They typically don't come into the game in goose egg scenarios, so they're not going to get goose eggs very often, if at all. With that being the case, why on earth would we include that in their score? That would be completely silly. So for middlemen, we use run prevention, base runner prevention, and command, the weights being run prevention 60, base runner prevention 26, and command 14. Hopefully, this all explained everything in a clear manner. I tried to be as concise as possible. If you have any further questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We will see you next time.